everyone, and thanks again for joining us here at Lux Mundi, where we bring you amazing people from around the world. And today we have a very amazing person visiting us all the way from Finland, Seppo Vainio. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. So greetings from Finland. So we have still a little bit snow here, but it's 8 o'clock local time, and we have sun up, and the days are getting longer. And in June we have really almost like non-stop light here. So it's a kind of amazing place. And in the winter we have like totally opposites. We have less light, but it's pretty exciting, and the moon is shining.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Over here in California at 8 o'clock, it's already getting dark. And I saw
Yeah.
outside your window and it's bright over there. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, we
Yes.
actually pretty close to Santa Claus even. So then this is a good place to
Yes,
know basically.
yes. And you guys have Borealis, a lot of Borealis research over there, correct?
Yeah, it's actually yeah. So we have a Sodankylä geophysical station, for instance, in Lapland, and then they
Yeah,
they do lots of borealis studies and many other features that are related to the north and the glacier and really this sort of a northern atmosphere and things like this. So it's a pretty important now when the glacier is melting and everything. So we have really lots to do there in our
that's
country.
wonderful. Well, I'm very excited to have you here with us today because you will be presenting during the Seventh World Conference on Peace and Light on the days of the 18th, 19th, and 20th of June. So I want to tell our viewers a little bit about you for those of us that don't know you. So Professor Vainio, he is a professor of developmental biology, the director of Biobank Borealis of Northern Finland, and a research unit leader in Biocenter Oulu, Infotech University of Oulu. Much of his work is devoted to the study of cell signaling, gene editing, stem cells, nanobiology, medicine, tissue engineering, and biosensors. He has received many important scientific acknowledgments and awards, such as the Psychologist of the Year in Finland of 1999, the Discovery of the Year in Biocenter Oulu, BCO, in 1999, 2004, and 2011, and Best Research Article among Finland developmental biology, in 2001, just to name a few. So that is just a few. I saw your biography, and there's an exponential amount of awards that you have on there, research topics that you have on there. It is amazing. And, I am very excited and I am very inspired to have been able to read all of that research that you have done since you were very young. And so I want to ask you a few questions today so that we can give the viewers a little kind of information about what you will be presenting during your time with us in June. So tell us, Vainio, what inspired you to do research around the idea that our brain and heart are not a closed box and that we are intrinsically connected to other living organisms?
Yeah, it's actually quite a nice story. So it starts actually before I was born, and my father was in US, actually in Philadelphia with my mother, and I was actually getting my beginning in Philadelphia, and then we traveled to Finland in a sort of ship like Queen Elizabeth actually at the 60s, and then my father was a scientist, and actually my grandfather was a scientist, and they studied a problem called induction. So it's basically exactly what we do here. So it's a sort of cell communication, how you get your finger or your nose, like I have a big nose. So then this is a problem that relates to obviously everybody of us when we were just inside our mother and we're developing. So it's a developmental biology is really a fundamental process that kind of is still almost like a mystery that we are trying to understand how we are put together in terms of the body and mind and our whole anatomy. So this is based on actually Nobel Prize winning stuff that Hans Spemann many years back actually identified that this communication between like what we do here a little bit with you, Teresa, and basically also the rest of the listeners. So we are now trying to ever since I started to do science to try to understand this kind of the biological body language in a way what we do
Okay.
between the cells. So then this led us to actually when I was in Harvard some years ago in 93, 97. So basically, we revealed these kind of languages that are messages that are sent by the cells. So what are the kind of the languages that the cells are kind of using? And then ever since I then returned back into Finland and came here to Oulu, so then we continued this research by looking actually this kind of cell language that this kind of happens to be exchanged when structures are being formed, like the hands and our, and then this actually led to a great opening that we found that this sort of a stuff that is more or less found in the brain in terms of the activities, how we are kind of performing our everyday life. So this is kind of found all over the body, and these are called secreted vesicles actually. And we were initially thinking that our kind of thinking and emotions and brain activities are somewhat separate from the rest of the body, and this was due to the fact that the sort of we were thinking the brain is very distinct in terms of its functions, that when we imagine something, so there's not necessarily a good connection to the rest of the body. But now it turns out that this is kind of opening up with this research that we are doing in the field altogether. So it's a big opening that many labs around the world are now studying, and this is a very exciting moment to kind of join this meeting.
Yes, I saw in one of your communications that this is something very new. Well, it's not new necessarily, but it's finally scientists are now tapping into this. So it's very exciting. Yes. Yes. So tell me, how can this knowledge of pangenesis and nanotechnology help create a world of peace and light?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a very fantastic and important question, given this time that we're living in, that all of us are kind of encountering this pandemic and all that stuff. So basically, I mean, this fundamental of science actually is that we were kind of inventing actually the system to kind of get understanding of nature by kind of having all sorts of devices, that you have a clock or a phone or something that serves as a reference. Because basically, if I imagine something, so it was thought that this is not necessarily connected to nature or rest of the things. If we don't do something, that you go and let's say hug you, or let's say you start to construct a device that would be doing something, or so that we have to do really concrete actions. So if we just dream and think about or visualize something, so then we were which not actually having a good understanding about how this kind of activity, which is kind of happening inside us, how this would be then translated into the world in a way that our thoughts or emotions would be sort of reflected into the external body, unless we don't say that how we feel, or you would, let's say, read the body language to how we are feeling. So now this material that we have inside, so it's kind of nanocosmos or picocosmos or microcosmos, which is kind of a nice, if we regard the classic esoteric, let's say, thinking that there are this microcosmos and sort of nanocosmos, or even this whole realms of existence. So now basically this the key question is that this, we were thinking that the nerves in our brain, so that they discuss by making these joint kind of networks that construct us, and then this was considered to be mediated by so-called synaptic vesicles that are sort of transmitting this activity that happens also in all of us now as we speak. And then that was more or less thought to be the primary system, how brains are somewhat functioning at the fundamental level, and including the electrical currents. But now it seems to be that this system, that the brains actually are functioning, so it's very broadly, first of all, active in all over the brain, and then especially this kind of capability to cross so-called barriers. That if you have, let's say, a border, if you take like a phone, so this would be kind of symbolizing the kind of a barrier. The brain would be here and the rest of the body would be here. So now we were thinking that this is like doesn't really allow stuff to go through in a way from our brain. But now it's so that these small things that are kind of in our body, this nanocosmos is basically able to cross all sorts of barriers, including from our brain into the rest of the body. So that's more or less the primary big opening. So it's like in science we would have opened a box of discovering America or some new land in a way, so we can really now start to much better kind of understand about, biology of emotions, or how we are then transmitting our being into other people. And so that's why it's actually very interesting also now, if we think about the time that we live in, that when we interact by digital means. So then, if we would be together in the same rooms, I would be like, my breath would be sending sort of biological, concrete, spiritual creatures, if you would say, that are sort of kind of thought forms that are transforming as I'm kind of expressing myself, and then they kind of fly as aerosols, like the COVID-19 crisis
Yes.
is kind of symbolizing this in a good way, because if I would be having a flu or this corona infection, so I would obviously not spread it around because there's now this digital barrier. But if I would be in the same room with the listeners, obviously that would be a risk that the virus would be spreading based on as an aerosol. But this is one kind of good example now that this nanocosmos is coupled to, so we're actually sweating, and it's there all over the place. So in a way, that's the way how these things are moving. So in principle, if I go out of my house and start to think about you, so I could actually think about that this spirit in a way transforms into these sort of very, very small representations of my positive feeling on you and the rest of the audience that listens to this. And then this kind of travels through the skies in a way, as is described in the poetry. So it's pretty exciting how these metaphysical things now start to get closer to the actual cutting edge science that is happening now around the world. And we are obviously not the only lab working on these questions, but it's really broadly happening all over the place, that there's lots and lots of interest and many applications that come out of these discoveries.
This is fantastic. I'm listening to you speak, and you're making me really think about all these different uh, scientists that are discovering, or that are actually tapping into all of this, and how our thoughts are really, we are sending those messages across. You, like you say, it's you are tapping into something that is connected. The energy is connected. And so and it's interesting because you're talking about the coronavirus and how that spread, but then it's also about our thoughts and how we can affect others.
Yeah,
It's like we're not just in our own little bubble, but everything that we are can affect everything that is biologically alive.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, it's
It's very, very interesting. And there's actually already evidence when scientists use different types of kind of models to study these things, and there's actually evidence already that the species like worms are communicating with this, that they're sending. There's evidence already for that matter, and now we actually are doing also systems that we can label these things, and we actually do experiments as we speak, actually in our laboratory, of strawberries or other types of, let's say, Finnish berries, for instance, that if you eat them, so then we can track them down, how they might come into your skin, let's say, and we are developing, let's say, new wearables based on this.
really
Yeah, so that you can actually then even milk. So there's lots of, which makes sense in a way, that the mother, when it's breastfeeding a newborn baby, so this is containing actually lots of stuff that goes to your stomach, and then or the gut, this tube that is digesting your food, and then basically these are going also similarly crossing the gut barrier and go into the bloodstream, and then go all over the body. So that's also new opening, how we can understand much better and in a new way, the value of nutrition, and how we process the food, and how this kind of brings up also new types of understanding about the significance of maybe concentration and putting your thought power and energy into the process when you eat. And like these spiritual traditions, actually, if you think about many of these traditions that have been out there in the culture, so these are somewhat now getting bridges, let's say, to the cutting edge science, that we can start to kind of go into these intuitive, let's say, ideas, how culture and poetry and things like this, stories and mythologies are out there. And like in Finland, we have interesting story called Kalevala. So it's actually in the area that we are living here. So there's a guy called Antero Vipunen. So he's I don't know what the English name for this Antero, but it's a name like Seppo.
Okay.
So Vipunen is like a guy that is a kind of meeting with Vainio, who's a very wise guy, and then he actually goes into the stomach of Antero Vipunen, and this sort of a chewing up and things like this. That how this symbolizes and goes to the stomach of this, and it's a lot of features about why vitamin goes there and how he gets eventually out. But this is like bringing up in a metaphor this kind of a thing of eating and digesting and what we do when we are let's say concentrating and really digesting food and meditating, let's say, on these processes that we are doing, like these kind of questions, even like, which is pretty interesting in spiritual sciences, is this blessings or really having good thoughts, what you put over to your relations or food, or that you kind of create an atmospheric energetic settings that then actually now impacting this nano level system that we are studying actually. So we have a few FET open programs that are really targeting these questions in the fundamental welcome, the mindfulness and its impact on these. And we're developing actually sensors that eventually can read, like this is the aura ring, but we have also the polar for kind of clock in our region, and we're now kind of intermingling also this, that eventually we can get, let's say, meditation or mindfulness kind of readouts. We call this kind of as a mirror of life concept, that we digitalization, where with the mobile phone was actually invented here in Oulu. So then, or this technology and this Nokia at the time was very strong. So then we can now start to envision new types of let's say feedback systems that which can help us to evolve as human beings.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Vainio. This is really great. I'm excited. Can you tell us, with everything that's been happening in the world during these times, do you feel that there are reasons to be hopeful?
I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously that I think that if you look at the history, and there's been crises, and we've covered from those, and basically, I mean, I'm an optimist in a way that, I mean, we have unexpected things, and I guess it's, if you think about us as an example. So when what is the function of disease, in a way that you are, let's say, losing your balance, and then you start to take it easy, and you go into yourself, and you try to recover, and then you renew things. So then these things about, let's say, getting a crisis and meeting, let's say, things that don't necessarily go as you would like them to go, and then you need to reshape a little bit about your mindset and try to tune in to new types of conditions, and that's, I guess, how we evolve, that once we encounter issues and problems, and so then we are going forward by that way. And this is maybe happening at the level of the planet, in a way that there's this so-called big movement called planetary health, and we have now a quantum institution which I'm actually starting to direct in early June, and actually turned 60. So my plan was to have a big party, but now because of Corona, we have to postpone that for next year. But anyway, so this quantum system actually is dealing with this planetary health questions, and this glacier, how it's melting, and we have a major programs on, I mean, how it changes everything. So I mean, there's obviously lots of this climate change and nature, how it impacts us, and I guess much of the listeners maybe know that this Corona, for instance, issue might be dependent on this so-called species decay, that when our actions as human beings impact on nature in a way that we get loss of species, let's say. And then the one theory is that the virus is including this, what causes the COVID-19, namely this SARS coronavirus 2 version and its variant. So basically they jumped into us because basically they lost kind of their host due to product loss, but let's say there was a reduction. So then that's something that, I mean, collectively, that the planet has to be taken now into the processes, so that we value altogether larger things, and that's why these kind of meetings are very important. That science is good in going into very fine details and fragmenting our world, but at the same time we need this kind of holistic, let's say, setting that we get, which we call in science like synthesis, that you get a bigger picture. So there's in Finland this kind of wording like nähdä metsä puilta, which means that you see the forest from the individual woods or trees, so that you see things. So therefore I'm actually optimistic that nature is so fantastic and complex, and we find all these fine details like this nanocosmos that we spoke about, which then offers lots of new opportunities to many directions. And then basically I think that, it might be that if we are not behaving and being able to act together as a kind of global population, that's why these kind of meetings are fantastic. That we should really use the internet and come together and really, like, there's now great initiatives that hundreds of thousands of people are kind of meditating or think about world peace at the same time. So given all these issues that we now know, so you can understand that this actually has an impact. If we are doing what this meeting is now doing, that you come together and think in a loving way, and these kind of blessings, and what to do for water and things like this. So it's somewhat we are getting closer to understand these values, and kind of what in science we do, this mechanistic processes that we what we also speak about here, that we can kind of have pretty concrete systems to explain how things actually function in nature and universe. And that's, I guess, the aim of the kind of this traditional scientific, Western scientific thinking in a way. So it's like I have in my back of me this drum, so it's everything is timing and rhythm and energy. This is a physical fact. So in a way, I guess we have to just tune in and do the good cycle. And as a drummer, actually, if I change the rhythm in a way, so obviously that causes a lot of hassle in the band. So similarly, I guess these energies and all these understanding that we have is pointing towards this type of a bigger interaction of live organisms, and also between the forces of the universe and the sun and stuff like that. So it's a fantastic time that we are living, and I'm somewhat positive that these meetings that you're organizing here is a good example. It's kind of a what we should do, and what the internet offers now, that we can come together and maybe when we have these technologies of mindfulness in our Mind Gap project, for instance, established and ready, so then we can come all together and maybe see that we actually have new types of features, because we are providing, let's say, these things that are, or polar or other devices are still quite like toys, but what we are developing is actually something that is going into the life and offering live monitoring, let's say, of our actions. And then this is stepping us to a new era of culture.
Wonderful. Mr. Vainio, we have come to the end of our interview. Oh, there's an echo. Okay, let's see. Okay, I hope that fixed it.
Yeah.
So I am going to give you an opportunity to say goodbye to our listeners. Maybe there's a message that you want to give them before we finish our interview today.
Yeah, thanks for everybody. I'll see you in the meeting, and I hope you enjoy it. And I guess this is a good meeting to have a kind of positive future for all of us after this COVID. And I guess all of our input makes a difference. And now maybe you get an inspiration how we can, and how we are bonded from an intrinsic side to the rest of the world, and even for cosmic events. So it's a fantastic time that we are having. And thanks for the interview.
No, well, thank you so much, Mr. Vainio. I think it's going to be wonderful to have you during our 7th World Conference on Peace and Light this year. And I can't wait to see your presentation. It's going to be exciting and very informative. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful time, and I will see you soon.
You too.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye bye. Bye bye.